few months ago, we visited the home of Oracle Red Bull Racing to catch up with sim racing superstar Sebastian Job. It's fair to say he had a pretty crazy year. Alongside his existing F1 Esports commitments with Scuderia AlphaTauri, he once again competed in the iRacing Porsche Esports Supercup, taking 7 wins and a runners-up spot in the final standings for the Oracle Red Bull Racing Esports team. Back in August, however, behind the scenes, a different opportunity was about to present itself within the team.
Yeah, so I basically was told that I had to do some assessments on VS2, which is a junior sim, and it was kind of like something was implied, but I didn't know what it was for really, and so I came up for one day, and then at the end of the day they were like, yeah, you can come back tomorrow. And then as soon as I got into reception the next day, I was greeted with an NDA that I had to sign. So it was like, oh, okay, I guess something serious is about to happen. Then I was told we're going to go and do some F1 sim driving.
When Seb says F1 sim driving, he's referring to the team's state-of-the-art bespoke Formula 1 simulator used by Max and Checo to prepare for a Grand Prix. This is something way more advanced and complex than most of us sim racing fans will have ever experienced.
We did the Hungarian in Budapest because that was the race that they had just done. And we had data to compare to, and obviously everyone had been driving that, they just got data from the real track, so I was comparing to Max's pole lap. I think it wasn't about the pace so much, but as long as my feedback was consistent and accurate, that was the main thing, and it was. We had a productive day, and then a couple of weeks later I was doing it for the real thing at Zandvoort.
Years of continued hard work and success at the highest level of sim racing had now resulted in Sebastian helping the reigning Formula 1 world champion set up his car for his home Grand Prix via the simulator back in Milton Keynes. Incredible.
It was very surreal. I think the main thing that kind of drives it home is I get into the rig and I see obviously they've got the real wheel, and these wheels are worth God knows how much, and that's the first kind of thing that I was like, oh, this is the real thing, because you step in, you see these, most people don't even get to touch the wheel because it's in glass, when you go on tours and stuff, and it's oh, this is what I'm going to be using. It's not just any wheel, it's going to be either Max or Checo's. Very futuristic looking, I can't say what, but it's very cool, and driving wise, it was very weird at first because we do sim racing, we're not used to motion, but honestly after a few laps you don't notice it, and then by I don't know, maybe 10 laps in, I felt like I had more feeling than I'd ever had on any sim racing game. I felt like I was driving the real thing. I felt absolutely everything. I felt so connected to the car. It was one of the most incredible experiences I've had in terms of ever driving, because I mean, let's be real, this car is incredible. The car Red Bull has designed is awesome this year. It's so nice to drive, and I could feel that, and it was it's so predictable. So you see it on TV, when Max is driving, he's planted and he's perfect with his driving, and I could feel everything. The car behaved how I wanted it, and it was pretty much, I'd never experienced anything like that with sim racing because I never had that feeling, and you kind of expect that, but it still strikes you as even better than expected.
It can be hard for those who haven't driven a real race car at the limits of adhesion to understand what realism should feel like in a sim. Of course, there are plenty of games out there that realistically portray the physics and behaviours of a race car based on accurate data, and equally, there are steering wheels and pedal sets out there which can provide you with detailed and nuanced force feedback in order to feel this. But no matter which software and hardware combination you're using, what no regular sim experience can give you is that seat-of-the-pants feeling of a race car underneath you.
The main thing in sim racing is people that develop sim racing games seem to think driving a real car is harder than it is, or it's very hard, but they have it in the wrong ways of why it's hard. For example, the F1 game, it feels like you're floating all the time, and this, I felt so connected to the car. I could feel the forces that were going through the car. I could feel what it was doing. I was making corrections without even realizing what I was doing. It was so natural and instinctive. you just don't get that on the F1 game. I have to think about everything I do. And even on the sim games like iRacing, it feels more natural, but it's not like this where I'm making corrections before I've even noticed it with my eyes. And primarily in sim racing, you're using your eyes and your hands to feel stuff or see stuff, and maybe your ears as well to hear the revs of the engine. Whereas with this, I just did it on instincts. Like, honestly, it's going to sound stupid, but it was easy, and that's what it should be. So the way I see it is, I have to practice hundreds of laps on the F1 game to be consistent, because it's not natural and it doesn't feel right. And I spin a lot in practice. I think I've had like 1 or 2 spins on the F1 sim because it just feels right, and I feel connected to the car. I can feel what's happening.
Seb has always had an analytical approach to his driving, be it virtual or analogue. Yes, if you weren't aware, he has also done some real-world Formula Ford racing, an opportunity that came from, of course, winning a sim racing scholarship. But he believes his attention to detail around setups and understanding the car's behaviour is one of the key things that made Red Bull look to him for this F1 role.
I'm very analytical. I don't drive just on feeling, but my practice revolves around understanding why the car's doing what it does, and I try to look really detailed into my driving and what I can do better. Even if I'm like on pace, I'll still be looking at data, comparing to other drivers, and see if there's even one corner I'm slower in, I want to fix that. And so that gives me quite a good understanding of the car. And because I come from a sim background rather than just the F1 game, but from iRacing, R-Factor, this means that I have quite a good knowledge of the car. So I've been doing my own setups for God knows how many years now. And I think that makes a big difference. And then just throughout the day, because I'm so used to driving for so long, I guess I just am able to focus for longer because I'm used to it. Like the days we do for VS2 or on the F1 sim, like, it's like a normal day for me, honestly. With sim racing, it's just a little bit of the physical side that's turned up, but mentally it's the same thing. Just have to focus a bit more on the feedback that I'm giving, so I have to think even more about what the car's doing, but that's not a big change for me.
You can't argue with the fact that sim racing and real racing are crossing paths more than ever before. Plenty of real racers grew up sim racing, and vice versa. It's also worth noting that Sebastian isn't the only one to make it as a professional simulator driver, thanks to previous sim racing exploits. Names like Atzi Kirchhoff and Rudy Van Buren spring to mind immediately. Maybe you watching at home are a talented young sim racer, or old sim racer, with an analytical approach and a passion for driving. You might be wondering if this is a viable and realistic career path that you can aspire towards.
I can't promise that other teams are going to delve into this, and maybe I'm the only one that does it, and then other teams are like, no, he's not good enough. Like, we don't want that.
You might be the first. You might start something here.
But alternatively, I might be the first, and there might be loads more of this to come. So I can't say if other teams are going to do the same, or if Red Bull's going to do more of this. But all I can say is that, and I don't mean this in like a arrogant way, but that you have to be a certain type of driver. I know a lot of people in sim racing who are just as fast, but they aren't analytical, and their feedback is awful. Like, I ask, like, I'm not going to name, but if I ask some of my teammates like what they're doing, they don't know, because they're like, I just drive. I don't think about it, I just drive it. And they're so talented that they can do that, which is great, but it's not great for this.
That's probably me, by the way. I fall totally into that category. Yeah. I can tell you kind of what I feel, but it's going to take a lot more to get me analysing the details of the setup. I just drive the thing.
But
so
I used to be like that as well, honestly.
Yeah.
When I first started, I was like that, but then I met someone that was faster than me, Freddie, and I wanted to understand what he was doing. And I started to learn, and then eventually I learned so much that I could match him on iRacing, and then because I understood exactly what was happening. It's the same when I've come onto the F1 game, because it's such a weird driving style. I've had to try and understand what works and what doesn't, because it doesn't suit me at all, and I've had to change everything. And I'm seeking out challenges, and that expands your experience as a driver. It sounds stupid, but I actually learned stuff by driving the F1 game that won't work on iRacing, but I'm going to try it just in case. And I'm going to try it on like the junior sim as well. It probably won't work, but it's just these things that I can tick off and say, that doesn't work. And maybe one thing will. And it's the more challenges you give yourself, the more knowledge you build. And that's what I've learned from driving on the junior sim, the F1 sim. It's like I've learned all these new things that I didn't know about, I never even thought about. And as a driver, you need to have all that knowledge in order to be able to do something where you swap between different platforms, I'd call it.
Not everything Seb learnt during his sim racing career proved to be beneficial, however, especially when first transitioning to the proper Red Bull simulator.
I remember my first session, like when we were doing the assessments, and Rocky was speaking to me like, what are you doing here? I was like trying to explain. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, this is just what I do. And he was like, well, this is not good. Like, you're making the car behave in a way you don't want it to behave, and it doesn't do that on sim racing. It was faster on sim racing, but it's like and then I fixed that and I gained half a second. Like, and it's just stuff like that I never got told it. I was never. If you don't have someone to tell you, how are you going to learn other than? And it's not like you have unlimited running in the real car. And honestly, even if I had unlimited running, I probably wouldn't have ever done it, because I was very set in my ways. I thought this is the ultimate way to drive, and I was very not stubborn, but I didn't know any better. And now I know there's new ways to drive, and I've still got to remind myself, like, maybe this isn't even perfect, maybe there's something else I can do better. So it's all a learning curve. For example, the way I brake now would generate more heat into the tire, and I just have more grip. That, like, it's simple as that. And every time I go from doing sim racing to junior sim or F1 sim, I have to like take 10-15 laps just to remember how to drive, basically.
So then, where does Sebastian Job see himself in 5 years' time?
Well, I think the interesting way of thinking about this is, if you asked me 5 years ago where I'd be, I would never have answered this. So I don't really want to set any certain goals, because then it could lead to disappointment, or maybe it might even end up better. But I'd love to be doing racing in real life in some form in 5 years' time, or sooner, really. But yeah, if you asked me this question 5 years ago, never would I have ever imagined that I'd be a sim driver for Red Bull Racing F1 team. So it's, who knows, like, I wish I could answer that, but I just know I want to be racing in real cars. That's the goal. And
have you spoken about those aspirations? Like, do you think this is something that could be happening? Is there any plans in place?
I'm working on it, but it's always a matter of funding, basically, as is always the way in motorsport. But I'm working towards it, and I feel like I've learned so much from the sim driving that I feel ready for it now. Obviously, I've been training physically as well to get ready for it in case an opportunity ever arises, and I've been learning with the team on how to drive properly, and I've had Rocky teach me stuff about how tires work and the understanding the basics of it, and I'm sure he'd be happy to share more information with me, and I have a lot of resources around me that I feel very much ready for it. It's just a matter of getting it into the actual situation.
We all hope that this is just the start of a long and successful journey for Seb in motorsport, and everyone at Traxion wishes him the best with these future ambitions. The main takeaway here is that sim racing continues to push talented individuals into the real motorsport world, sometimes even at the highest possible level. Long may it continue. We would love to hear what you think in the comments below. Is this something you believe will become common practice for top level teams in the future? Whilst you're here, why not subscribe to the Traxion channel as well, so that you don't miss a video, and leave us a like if you've enjoyed this one. Until next time, thanks for watching, keep it pinned, and have a great day.